Hi, I'm Rosie Grant, Executive Director of Paterson Education Fund. Welcome to the 2020 Paterson School Board Election Candidates Forum, which is sponsored by Paterson Education Fund. PEF is not endorsing any of the candidates, but rather providing an opportunity for you to get to know them. There are 6 candidates vying for 3 3-year terms this year. I invite you to learn more about the candidates and the election issues in our Educated Voters Guide, which is available on our website at paterson-education.org, or you may call us at 973-881-8914. If you do not have internet access to see the guide and would like a mailed copy, we're happy to do so. Welcome to all the candidates. Thank you for joining us today. I will be asking a series of questions. I will ask you to limit your answers to 2 minutes per question. And at this time, I would like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Since we're not live, I'll call on each person to do their introduction. So in the order of my screen, Mr. Irving, please take a minute to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Herman Irving. I am a 15-year veteran of the Paterson Fire Department. I attended Rosa Parks High School, graduated the year 2000, studied exercise science and athletic training and community health at William-Paterson University. And I'm very, very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Ms. Lemon.
Good evening, everyone. First, thank you to Paterson Education Fund for the opportunity to have the candidates express who we are and get to know what we stand for. My name is Shaniqua Lemon. I'm born and raised here in Paterson, New Jersey. I am a private educator and I have a tutoring business. My field of career is early childhood. I'm excited for this opportunity to be able to put myself out here to make a difference for our children here in Paterson.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity once again. My name is Kenneth L. Simmons. I am the current president of the Paterson Board of Education. I'm a longtime member of the Board of Education, humbly seeking the support of Paterson residents to continue the work that we've been doing over the past 10 plus years. And that is moving the district forward, moving towards local control, and doing what's best for students.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
Good evening. Thank you, PEF, for having again this forum. I'm born and raised in Paterson. Many might remember me from last year. I ran for Board of Education, but sadly I did not make it at that time. I lost shortly by 8 votes. So I'm trying my luck again this year. I'm a school social worker. I went to William-Paterson University, have my bachelor's in Spanish and minor in Latin American studies and women and gender studies. And I attended Monmouth University for my master's in social work. And I'm currently attending Monmouth again to get my student assistant coordinator certification. And I'm hoping to bring about more social emotional wellness programs onto the district and more advocacy for our parents and community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Hodges.
Good evening. This is Dr. Jonathan Hodges. I'm an 18-year veteran of the Paterson Board of Education. I was here very early when we struggled with such things as keeping $50 million out of the hands of unscrupulous individuals who worked for the district. And we have fought to transform the district from where it was to where it is now. We were under intense scrutiny, under local control. We struggled academically in a most significant manner, and we have gradually built the system from where it was to where we are now. But we have a long way yet to go. I'm looking forward for additional support as we continue that struggle to bring the educational system for our children to where it needs to be. I thank you.
Thank
1J.
you. Okay, I'm going to start with the questions, and Dr. Hodges, I'll start with you, and then we'll answer the same question in reverse order of our introductions. First question, school has been remote for the past 6 months, starting in March, and then our summer break, and so far this semester. The board plans to do an assessment in October with the possibility of reopening in person November 2nd. What is your opinion about reopening?
When our very good reopening plan was formulated, I was the single vote against the implementation of that plan because as a physician, I was terribly concerned about the conditions, the health conditions in the city. I did not think at that time that it would be wise to have a in-class instruction because of those conditions. And as we look at the landscape down the road, I am just as concerned now. As we transition toward the winter months, the fall, winter months, people will be indoors a lot more than they have been. And the chances of getting, of transmitting the virus are higher when you're indoors than they are when you're out. And people in the city aren't wearing masks and aren't social distancing to the degree that we need to. So I would not want to risk having those students, our students, put into classrooms that we can't necessarily say are going to be safe. And we have to look at the surrounding environment with the health department as we make those decisions moving forward. So I am reluctant to say that we are ready to have their schools open.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Ms. Martinez?
Yes. Firstly, I think in order to even consider a reopening, we have to ensure that that the plan is secure for all students and teachers. When I say secure, making sure that teachers have the right equipment, masks, cleaning supplies are there. We have the right staffing that's going to do continuous cleaning at all times. Maintain social distancing guidelines within the schools, ensuring that the students and staff are protected in all measures, which along with the mask and the desk guards. So I think it's very important to consider these facts and ensure the safety first before reopening. But I am for reopening because as a social worker, development and socialization is very important for the child and for adults as well. So I think it's important to work towards that reopening and try to create normalcy again and rebuild from this pandemic and try to catch up our children to where they need to be at. Thank you. Dania Martinez, 4J.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
So the reopening plan is just that, a plan, because you have to have a plan for reopening once we get to that point. But it isn't a plan that constantly evolves. So the important part to that is that there is an assessment period built in. And during that assessment, we will look at what the transmission rates are, what hospitalization rates are, and beyond that, we also have to make sure that the buildings are safe, the proper equipment's there, and all of those things are in place before we can even go into a building. But the assessment part is the critical piece. And during that, we'll be looking at all of that information, working with the city and the county, and looking at the towns around us to make that decision.
Thank you. Ms. Lemon?
My first thoughts are to follow what the scientists and our doctors are saying. They are the professionals as far as health-wise and safety-wise. So first, I always say listen to our scientists and our doctors. Secondly, Paterson, the district, is still gathering funds or still gathering equipment to make sure that they are providing the safety, whether it be monitoring temperatures, hand sanitizing station, making sure we're fully stocked with cleaning supplies. We don't want to run out if we're opening up schools. Secondly, I think agreeing with Mr. Simmons as far as assessing to see what students are doing well with remote learning. Some students are enjoying it, whereas some students, I would like to know how many students are actually logging on, how many students are absent. I believe our special needs population, if we do open schools, they should be the first ones to go into the building, just because there's special techniques and different learning styles that parents aren't able to give them. So for them to be able to have that one-on-one with teachers, and also doing an evaluation of what teachers are comfortable with going into the buildings, what incentives can we give them to really push them to want to come in.
Thank you. And Mr. Irving.
I think everybody's given a great insight on why the school should not be open at this time, and I agree with everybody else. Throughout the whole COVID months that we've been going through, I've been on the front lines with my coworkers as an EMT and as a firefighter, dealing with a lot of things that have been going on, and a lot of it's been taking an emotional toll on a lot of us by what we've seen. You know, one minute we see everybody's fine, and then the next minute we might be coming back to a call and their condition is downgraded to something to where it's life-threatening, or I hate to say it, it has been, you know, resulting in death. This is a very serious virus. Everybody does not know fully what it can do because a lot of people have not seen what it has done. I've seen what it's done. I know how important it is that we make sure that we keep our children, you know, we keep our babies, you know, and we keep our staff as well safe. I mean, the last thing, you know, we want to do is have anybody come into the school with the virus and give it to somebody else. And then, you know, some of our students or even our teachers take it home to their loved ones. And that's one of the worst things that, you know, we really want to do. A plan does need to be implemented. I know this, I know the board has started a process of a plan, but I think it needs to be followed to the T if we are going to do it. We need to start in baby steps. If it means that one day a week we start and see how everything goes from there, that needs to be done. But all the necessities need to be there. You know, all the cleaning products, you know, all of, you know, like face masks, hand sanitizing, whatever it needs, whatever that needs to be done, it needs to be done. Our fire department, we've done very, very well with that. You know, ever since I would say around the month of May or June, we have had a very, very, very low rate of any of our coworkers testing positive for COVID. And I think that's a few things that, you know, that I can use to help implement a plan to be put in place for us. So that's my thought.
Thank you. I understand that Commissioner Ramirez is trying to join us. So we will give him the opportunity to respond when he gets in.
Can you hear me, Rosie?
You are here. Okay. Your screen says Linda Reed. Welcome, I think, because you used your link, but that's
You
fine.
sent me a link. Linda,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We'll change
Linda's
that momentarily, but for now,
you're welcome.
You do get the opportunity to introduce yourself and to answer our first questions, which is schools have been remote for the last 6 months, and the board now plans to do an assessment in October with the possibility of reopening in person November 2nd. What is your opinion about the reopening? It's 2 minutes per question, but please do take your time, a minute to introduce yourself and then to respond to the question.
I'll make it brief. I think that in the last decade, people in Paterson have gotten to know me a little bit. People like Linda Reed, who I served on the Paterson Task Force with for 5 years. Joel Ramirez, 3J on the ballot. I am currently an incumbent on the board, a board that I'm very proud of being a member of because of all the great things that we have been able to do in the last 3 years with great partners like the PEF. In terms of the question and reopening, we do have a plan together. If anyone has a chance to pick up a copy, it's a whole booklet. I think the administration did a great job at putting this together, looking at the data, looking at the science. In terms of reopening and assessing this on or about October 15th, well, we have to follow the science. We have to follow the experts. We've seen spikes in places like New York City, where they're considering shutting down non-essentials again, and this spills over to education. And if we see that we are continuously having more infected individuals, we need to take that into consideration, the hospitalization capacity in our area as well. So, you know, 3 things: the science, the experts, the data has to be looked at, and that has to be number 1. The second, our staff. We have to survey our staff. Will they feel comfortable coming back into the buildings? If we are not going to have the capacity to have a teacher in front of every student, then that's going to be a huge issue for Paterson Public Schools. And thirdly, the administration. Do they feel that we are ready? Like, our buildings, are they ready? Do we have the proper ventilation? Will we be able to provide the proper PPE, and so on and so forth? So I know everybody else has touched upon some of those things, but that would be my answer as an incumbent, as a member of the current board. You know, a lot of things go into putting these plans together. It's not just that easy. And I think we've done a good job at putting the current plan together, and I know we'll make the right decision for Paterson Public Schools.
Thank you. Our second question, we will start with Ms. Martinez. What are some policies that could help to ensure that Paterson children are safe in and out of school?
So a policy that we could put in place is bringing in social emotional resources for our students, educating them on having healthy relationships, safety, how to express their emotions. I think this is very important within our community because we see a lot of gang violence, a lot of gun violence, teens running away, youth that are running away. As a case manager for human trafficking and working with youth at risk, I see a lot of lack of resources that many of these youth have. And if, you know, the place that children are the most is within the schools. So if we implement a policy that addresses these issues and where children are able to communicate what they're feeling, ask for help, and able to look for healthy relationships instead of going out, you know, and looking for them in the wrong way, this will create a better child that will learn better academically. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
So policies that keep students safe in and out of school, particularly now with the remote learning, some important policies would be centered around digital etiquette and digital citizenship, things like that, making sure that students aren't doing things properly, making sure that they are also safe in the digital space. So we create policies around that in terms of keeping them safe out of school. I mean, yeah, out of school, because digital right now, remote is school. But out of school would be some of the same things. Like we've had policies around positive peer. I can't recall the third part of it, but it's something like a restorative justice, where students are actually learn to cope and learn to deal with conflict and how to de-escalate conflict. So those are things that we can do, that we've done, but those are things that we can look into and make sure that those policies are updated.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Ms. Lemon, I want to Remind the audience that you can put questions into our Q&A box, and we will get to those after we have gone through the questions that we prepared in advance. Ms. Lemon.
Okay, in regards to policies, I know that in Paterson we have some of the full service community schools, I believe about 6 of them. We have more than 6 schools in our city. So with that being said, I also did research on what additional, other than teachers, what staff or what resource staff that we have. And I know to every 400 students, there's about 1 counselor for every, what was it, about more than 500 students, there's like 1 nurse. So I would say we would need more counselors, guidance counselors, nurses into our schools. I know that they do social emotional questions, like they may ask, you know, how do you feel, but it's remote. So everything is literally through typing. Maybe if we can have more talking to our children, maybe a team that really spends time getting to know our students and talking to them about their needs. Commissioner Capers touched on restorative justice, but that's mostly of, you know, once someone gets suspended. Coming from an early childhood perspective, it's really important at a younger age to start teaching children and even adults. We need to learn how to handle our emotions, how to respond to things. So I would start with 1, teaching kids, giving them the language to express themselves and to how to deal with conflict. Other policies as far as outside of schools, I would say communicating with community organizations that deal with children and even giving them hands-on training as far as how can they incorporate safety into the programs or activities that they offer in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
Yes, I'm sorry. As far as having policies implemented, I think it's very important that we do have policies that are implemented that result in our young men and women learning how to start re-entry back into school. That's very important as well. A lot of our young men and women have been out of school for quite some time, and it's a good idea for them to learn how to cope and get back into school. As far as behavior policies as well, these are things that I think that should further be implemented, with any type of programs that we have, with our children that in regards to education. And, that is, to me, like the most important thing right now is trying to find ways to allow our children to learn how to cope with getting back into school, because being out of school for the amount of time that they have been, a lot of our young men and women won't have the skills that they used to have because they've been out for a while. And when you're comfortable being home, trying to get back into school again is something that, we should give them every opportunity to learn how to, get back into the groove again, taking things one step at a time, one day at a time.
I'm sorry, thank you. Dr. Hodges. I'm losing my voice.
Well, because the environment in school has changed, we now have a different set of behaviors that have to be reinforced because of the COVID restrictions and accommodations that we have in place. There's changes in how we walk down halls. There are changes in how we sit in rooms and how we have lunch and also how the classroom is structured. And so we're going to have to have policies in place that will reinforce that understanding and put together a set of behavioral requirements that will help sustain these new protocols for safety. In addition to that, until we go back to school, there is the digital safety that has to be supported to make sure that their conduct that's not detrimental to students and to their classmates be limited, and then somehow and we get the sort of detail what those contexts are that we're not looking to have sustained here. So those are some key areas in which policies that would help support our students and particularly the safety of our students in this current environment.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Rosie. So, you know, sometimes we don't realize before we get onto the board the number of policies Paterson Public Schools already has in place. And yes, some of them do need to be updated. But in regards to keeping our kids safe in and out of school, you know, in this virtual era, I remember last year I attended a conference and I saw something that I think we would be able to benefit from. And it's simple. The program, I forget the name, but what happens is there is a set of code words put together, and you actually partner up with different levels of government, maybe the Passaic County Prosecutor's Office, Sheriff's Department, Paterson Police, the state troopers. And what happens is when any of these agencies or even nonprofits are called to the school for some kind of emergency or trauma that a child is going through, these codes are then exchanged between, let's say, the guidance counselor, principal, and the agency. And they will know what type of trauma the child is going through, and then they will go from there and take the necessary steps to help the child. So it minimizes the amount of trauma the kid or child goes through, because they don't want to hear this whole story of what's happening to them being told to a stranger. It's very simple, 2 words, and then the necessary actions are taken. I think that's a good policy we can implement in Paterson Public Schools to keep our children safe in and out of school, because they do go through a lot of things, especially now that they're home and we don't know in the hands of whom they could fall into, neighbors or whatever you may have.
Thank you so much. I am having some technical difficulties, but trying to keep this going. We will start our 3rd question with Commissioner Simmons. How do we move toward healing-centered environments for our children and adults that are working with them?
I'm sorry, repeat that. How do we
move towards healing-centered environments for our children and the adults that are working with them in schools?
So you establish programs that deal with the social and emotional health of both our students and parents and teachers alike. And you can do that by, you know, since we're in the digital space, when we talk about like the restorative circles, you know, I know we've done that in the board where we've done a restorative circle, just so people can have the opportunity to talk about how they feel. And that's important. So establishing those types of programs in this space, and that would be the first step.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Ms. Lemon. Are you next? Yes.
So the question was in regards to healing spaces?
Yes, healing-centered environments.
Healing-centered. I would first say that having the children more involved in learning, instead of it being so much of reading text or now reading digitally, even with remote, we have to get creative on how to have it child-based, figuring out what interests them. There's many children who would learn more of, you know, touching and looking and experiencing things. So we have to get creative with remote learning if we're going to continue remote learning, and how to bring in the different learning styles. And then also family engagement. I know it can be a challenge to even get parents to come out and to participate. But again, I would like to piggyback on having those phone calls where you can touch base with families and touch base with parents and get to know exactly how the district can better serve them. As far as healing, our community, we deal with a lot of trauma. everyday trauma, whether it be violence, gangs, drug use. So those are key topics that we must talk to our children, again, from a younger age, and even in our teenage years, talking to them about solutions, how to cope with things that they're dealing with. And again, bringing on more social and emotional learning and people that have experience in those areas to touch base with our students.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Irving.
I think one of the ways that we can really do that is making sure that our young men and women are comfortable being a part of the classes. I know there's things that have been done in the school system to where even now, even with the remote learning that we're doing, that that there are drills, exercises, kind of like yoga, or any type of special activities beforehand. They're being done to allow our young men and women to be comfortable at the start of the classes. Before before the screens come on, or even before our children come to school, we really do not have an idea or understanding of what it is that they are going through. So, the best thing I think to do is to continue these type of activities. It's a way to be therapeutic for them. It also allows them, a way to kind of just unwind and help themselves get prepared for the day that's in front of them. And that, to me, I think that is one of the most important things that we can do.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Linda. So since I've been on the board, I've noticed a tremendous increase in the number of resources that have been put towards social emotional learning. As you know, the PEF has facilitated restorative circles and creating of these healing spaces in Paterson Public Schools. I think we need to take it a step further, and every school should have something like what we have at Eastside High School, which is that peace room that was started somewhat by Dr. Gleason, God rest his soul, and we need to bring that to every school. There should be a space where a child can go into and just disconnect. Of course, there has to be a proper procedure of how the child goes in there and who's notified, and somebody who can actually know that the child is in there that can check up on the child, especially in the lower grades. But we need to actually maximize and expand those safe healing spaces within our schools, and we need to strengthen our partnerships with faith agencies, health centers, and nonprofits throughout the city. We have a lot of resources in our area. I think we're just not doing enough to tap into them.
Thank you. Dr. Hodges.
Well, this is going to be a major problem. And you have a situation here where students have been out of school for 6 months. They've had, their communities have been ravaged by the virus and the consequences of the virus, with family members lost, friends lost, and having to be without their friends for quite some time. You also have teachers who are coming into situations where they could be a little bit uncertain about the dangers in schools. So all of this is going to require a large social and emotional program that will address the needs of the students and the staff. This means working with our guidance department and also nursing to determine some of the more common issues that the staff and the students are facing, and then developing plans to help mitigate some of these more common problems. And additionally, we want to give specialized attention to some of the less common situations that our students and our staff face. We are going to be dealing with this for quite some time because we're not out of this yet. And I think this is going to be an important part of our educational system, which is going to be the social and emotional component as we move forward.
Thank you. And Ms. Martinez.
As a school social worker, I have seen what this pandemic and the situation has done to our children and our families. And one thing that I have noticed and will point out that I think the first step to begin with healing is building better relationships and communication line with our parents, because when we understand in order to understand what our families and our children are going through, we have to we have to communicate with the parents and understand what their concerns are. And once we understand what those concerns are, we'll be able to better address them. Also, what I've done is have virtual therapeutic sessions via Google Hangouts or a secure platform, having that conversation with our children. I generally work with special education students, so a lot of the concerns that I have of my students is the workload and the lack of resources that they have working remotely. So it's important to provide that support. So as a case manager, that's my number one priority, to provide that support to my students. And along with the general education students that, I do handle from here and there, but that's the first step, building that communication with our parents and understanding what their needs are, because once you understand the needs, you'll be able to address those issues that are at hand.
Thank you. Our fourth question will begin with Ms. Lemon. With the understanding that the school board's role is policy and not administration, what will be your legacy to future generations of Paterson students?
My legacy to
Yes.
to future Paterson students and to Paterson in general would be teamwork. As a board member, it takes more than just one person. We all can say all these promises and, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But at the end of the day, there's 9 board members, and it takes 5 board members to make a vote and to really have effective change. So teamwork, communication, and partnership is my legacy and what I will pass on to students and even to adults. It's to change the mindset of I, and make it more of we.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
The legacy I would like to leave behind is one that our young men and women can remember and always, and will never forget that coming from the city of Paterson, you are able to make it out here in this world. There are a lot of us from Paterson, that were never given the fair shot like other students were from other cities, because there's always been a bad moniker about our city. And that's one of the things that I'm a very big proponent about. I do not like when people talk about my city. I don't like when people talk about the parents and the children of my city, because we all do everything we can, and we don't know everybody's situations, and we don't know what people are dealing with. There's a lot of resources that our young men need, and we need to make sure that these resources happen, so that way they can go out into this world and leave a very positive legacy. I came from a home where, even though my mom was an educator, my father passed away when I was 2 years old. So, at that point, as an African-American male, I'm considered, a statistic behind the 8 ball. But, I kept my head strong. I was able to go to college, and I was also able to become a Paterson firefighter. And that is one of the most important things that I like to show our young men and women, that, we do have the ability to, overcome all adversities and be whatever it is that we want to be. And once we do that, for us to be able to facilitate that information back to our young men and women as they are adults, so that way our younger generation can become like the older generation and become proud and successful.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Rosie. So that's a very big question. When you talk about legacy, you always think about people who were president of the United States or senators who did monumental things like Dr. Martin Luther King. But if you put it into our local context, and if I think about what it would mean for me, I'd like to leave a legacy of service above self. And what I mean for that is, I would like to be remembered as, that individual who grew up in Paterson Public Schools, who went to college and could have left Paterson, but decided to invest in his community and by his first home at 24 years old, who decided to give back to his community by serving on numerous boards, like I mentioned earlier, Paterson Task Force, Housing Authority, and a number of other boards where we don't get paid, which we're volunteers. And for somebody who, as many of us here are, and many in the city are, college educated, you can make money for your time, but we decided to give back. And also remembered as never thinking about myself as an individual, but as myself as part of something greater, which is our community.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hodges.
When I came here, 12% of our students passed the high school proficiency test. We had over 13 to actually buildings that were over 100 years old and in grave disrepair. We had mismanagement in our administration to the tune of loss of $50 million. We were considered to be an advisory school board because the state had come in and take over the district because of a number of failing performances on the parts of the board and the school district. I have worked very hard as part of a number of boards to change that, to move that needle ahead. My goal is to have our school, our students be well educated, who are able to go and compete globally and become lifelong learners, and to make the educational system in Paterson second to none. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I started out to do. And we're a lot further along than we were when I came here. We have some buildings that really need to be worked on that are over hundreds of years old. We've got expectations that really need to be lifted on the part of not only their staff, but our community as well, for what our students can and cannot do. We need to move the needle so that our kids are reading more on school, on grade level, who are able to not just understand material, but are able to master the material in the classrooms. Those are the kinds of skills that we still need and are well within our reach. And I want to work as part of the team that helps to develop those competencies in both our staff and our students.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
The legacy that I would like to leave is that one quote that I live by is, don't allow your environment to dictate who you are. I was a teen mom at the age of 18 years old. I had my daughter, and a lot of obstacles and closed doors came with that. But I fought through those struggles and through those obstacles, was able to complete high school, went to college, went on to get my master's. So I want to show that, I'm a product of Paterson, and Paterson has taught me resilience, has taught me to be a fighter and to look for things that are going to better myself. So when we show our children and our community that we are what is the word? We are able, we are worthy of an education, and we're entitled to better ourselves. So when we work hard and we follow our dreams, yes, we will fall, but they will happen if we're determined and we stick with them.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
Muhammad Ali, is one of his quotes was, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." And so service is the legacy that I want to leave behind. I've been servicing my community ever since I was 18, by starting a mentoring group, by coaching, and doing all of those things in the community, and now serving on the board for the past 10 years. As it relates to the board, when I got here, we had a graduation rate of about 46%. And so I've been fortunate to be a part of a team that has, moved the Dr. Hodges says the needle. It was like, like turning this district around is like turning the Titanic in the Passaic River.
Mm.
It is steady movement, but we are moving, and we've been constantly moving. And so I want to continue that and making sure that we continue to move this district forward. We're moving towards local control, and I've been a part of that. And that's also part of the legacy I want to leave, to being a part of the team that took control back from the state.
Okay, thank you. I see that we have a few questions in the chat box. Linda, do we have any in Q&A as well?
Those are the ones.
Okay, so I'll ask this question from the community. Paterson Public Schools have been underfunded for many years, and the underfunding has caused cutbacks in programs and staff reduction. If elected, what would you do to help increase the funding and reduce expenditure? And Mr. Irving, you are up for first to go at this one.
Thank you very much. This is actually one of the biggest things that I am an advocate for, is getting resources back to our young men and women in our city. We know that with all the cuts that have happened, it has given nothing more for our young men and women to do, which has resulted in them finding other outlets, as far as recreation to say. What we need to do is we need to go through the entire budget that we have and really look and see where the money is going to and how we can use that money and those resources to put them back into recreation. A lot of people think recreation has to deal with sports and outside activities, but with a lot of the good mentors that were in these after school programs, and I was lucky enough to be in an after school program, you couldn't play any sports or you couldn't go outside until your homework was done. And I think that's one thing that's very, very important, that, when you have that type of accountability for our young men and women to, make sure that there is a priority first, which is their education. And, you have people in these recreational programs to, watch over our young men and women and people who are actually successful as well. That is the most important thing that needs to happen for our young men and women. We need our resources back. So we need to do everything possible. So if elected, that is something that, is one of my first and foremost things to do, is to go dive directly into that budget and see where that money needs to come from to make sure that our young men and women have the resources that they need in order for them to succeed in our city.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
So there's a few things that that I've thought about, and I've brought them up in the past, and I'm very happy to not announce because it's been out there already, but reiterate that we will be working on the restructuring of our high schools. That can save us up to $4 million. I have already had conversations, and I know there are conversations occurring about the possibility of moving 90 Delaware to another location that is more centralized. That could save us $3 million a year we pay for 90 Delaware. Some of these other triple net leases need to be looked at and possibly relocate these facilities to buildings that we already own, like Clark Street, like Church Street, in order to save a few $1 million in lease money that we spent there as well. And finally, I think we need to seek legal action. We need to seek the legal avenues, because the law says that we need to be providing our students with a thorough and efficient education, and the state is not providing us the funding for that. So we need to seek the legal avenues to obtain that. And a fifth point, I've brought it up before and I keep bringing it back. We need to look into moving our banking facilities to a different bank. The county did something similar, and they're making over $4 million a year just by having switched banks. We need to do that. I brought that up before during the budget process. It hasn't been done. I hope that we can make it happen.
Thank you. Dr. Hodges.
This has been a major issue for me. 80% of our budget roughly comes from the state. And during the Christie administration, we were shorted in our funding illegally to the tune of $280 million. This past year, we had to make up a $63 million budget. And so we're going to have to get the state to follow through on what the Supreme Court says it's supposed to. The continued illegally underfunding our school district does cause a number of problems for us in terms of cuts of programs, cuts of staff, which leads to increased class sizes and further hampering our ability to improve our educational system. And so what I have done in the past is I have gone to Trenton on numerous occasions to argue for our funding in front of the state board, in front of the assembly, in front of the state senate. I've discussed the issues with governors, commissioners of education alike, saying that we need to be funded to the tune that the Supreme Court says we need to. Obviously, there are things that we can do to make a number of cuts in our own funding, but every year we have a 6% increase in the cost in our district, regardless of what we're doing, medical costs, benefits, salaries, on and on and on, every single year. So just making small cuts alone won't work to substantially improve our financial footing. We're going to have to get funds from the state and in consummate with what the Supreme Court says. That may mean taking legal action if that's not forthcoming.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
Can you repeat the question for me, please? I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem at all. I just have to get to the right place because it was in chat. The schools have been underfunded for many years, and this has caused cutbacks in programs and staff reduction. If elected, what would you do to help increase funding and reduce expenditures?
Okay, so what I would do if I were elected, like Irving said, I'm gonna piggyback on his, is reviewing the budget, looking at what's being spent, what can be reduced and put into other resources. Another thing is looking to resources in the community that we could bring in that are at no cost for our schools. There's many resources out there. We just have to take advantage of them and know where to apply. Looking into more grant funding resources as well will help our budget a little bit better, and also lessening the outside contract agreements, hiring within our community, and using, because when we contract outside, it costs more money than employing people within our community, within our district. So these are some things that I would advocate and fight for once elected.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
So this year, as Dr. Hodges stated, we were extremely aggressive with the budget in terms of closing that $63 million gap. But even in closing that from 63 to 14, there was still a gap. So what I did was I reached out to Trenton and I asked the then commissioner, for a meeting with himself and his team, which he did oblige. And, we had a meeting in Paterson and we talked about the things that needed to be done in terms of funding and making sure that this district gets the resources that it needs. Although the governor has a plan to fully fund all districts in 7 years. As we know with COVID, that has changed. So this comes down to advocating and going to Trenton to basically get what we need. Beyond that, there are things that we can do and that we have begun to do in terms of doing minority set-asides, so that we're making sure small businesses or local businesses are getting contracts, and so we're saving money there. when we talk about insurance in terms of healthcare, making sure we are in the right plans and choosing plans that save us money. So those are things that we've been doing on our end. Also creating a nonprofit to go after grants that the school district itself cannot go after. So those are things that we've done. And those are the types of things that I want to continue doing.
Thank you. Ms. Lemon.
When I first started doing more research on budgeting and funding, the word illegally underfunded just kept coming to my mind. And if this is illegal, what actions can we take to demand the money back? So I would say partnering with our government, our legislative government, to see how they can, one, assist us and how they can help us form action plans to go after the money that we've been owed, over $300 million. Secondly, I would say, again, always partnering with community organizations and other nonprofits to see what funds can they bring in to partner with us so that they can help us develop additional programs. A lot of our children spend time in school, but now with remote learning, and then once they're out of school, we need to make sure that their learning continues. I would also say going through the budget, especially with commissioners that are already on the board, and then just people in our community that have knowledge on budgets and who run other budgets outside the school district, to really see where the money is going. I know more than half of the budget, I believe it's maybe 70%, goes to salaries, and it's very little money that's actually going directly to our children. So we need to figure out contracts, and as far as what in the district can we save money on, because what I have been seeing is programs will start and things will start, but once funding gets cutted, you know, those great ideas and those great programs, they kind of get washed away. And we have to be strategic on what we start to make sure it's something that can be sustainable.
Thank you. We have several more questions in the chat and in Q&A. I just want to check in with the candidates. Are you good for about another half an hour? We are at 5:57.
Yes.
Rosie, I'm sorry, it's Joelle. I do have another engagement, so I could be on another 10, 15 minutes.
That works. So to be fair to everyone, let's agree to cut off at 6:15. So the next question that I see in the panel, and we will start with you, Commissioner Ramirez. What have you done, or how will you address the reading and math assessments or African-American males who are the lowest performing students in the district?
So the board that I've proudly have been a member of for the last 3 years has worked really hard with the administration to make sure that we are pumping the resources in to bettering that situation for students of color across the board, Black and brown. We have the old boys school, which, as you know, we had a lot of pressure to close because of many, many different issues. And that has turned around because of the resources that we've put in and the changes that the administration has done with our blessing. For the first time in a very long time, Paterson Public Schools also has a universal curriculum. In the past, a student from school 6 was probably learning differently and using different books, and a lot of different styles were being implemented from a school 3 or a school 2. And when the student goes from one school to the other, then they're consistently falling behind because of the huge difference. So those are two big things impacting the specific questions: the universal curriculum across the district, and the additional and steady resources into the old boys school, which mainly and primarily does serve young men of color.
Thank you. Dr. Hodges.
This has been a major issue for me. I have been pushing for reading improvements starting in preschool. I've been trying to get the district to make sure that our students who have gone through 2 years of reading or 2 years of preschool enter kindergarten with being able to read. This is possible, but it is something that we have not really pushed as hard to accomplish. If you don't read by 3rd grade, then it's hard to catch up. Once you're in third grade, you stop learning to read, you read to learn. And that affects math, your ability to learn math, science.
Dr. Hodges, you've muted.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That affects your ability to master your other subjects. So it's fundamental to push for reading early on, and so I've been pushing to strengthen that area, and it has resulted in a new reading program, which we're not able to effectively assess now because of the COVID environment. But that's the work. Making sure that the curriculum that we have developed is implemented is another area of importance to me. And so I pressure the administration to demonstrate that what's happening in the classroom is what's supposed to happen. We've been asking the administration to show us that the teachers are professionally trained on our curriculum to the degree that it can be implemented with fidelity across the board. Those are two areas that are extremely important to me. I have been a strong advocate for the all boys school. In fact, I was one of the founding voices for the creation of that school. And because the males were the African-American males and Latino males were the lowest performing students in the district then, and we continue to be today. So we wanted to take the successes from that school and try to roll it out into other classrooms once we determine some best practices. And those are some of the ideas that I brought to the table and will continue to work with as my role on the board.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
I think in order to address these concerns, it's important to understand, what about the curriculum is not working, and adjusting it. I have seen a lot of I've seen a lot of online reading programs that are very efficient. I've seen them with students that I work with, where it helps them achieve different levels, and they understand where they need the help and where they need more reinforcement. Also, in order to better address this reading and math issues, involving our parents, educating our parents on how to better help their child, bringing in more resources, whether it be after school programs, before school programs in the morning, like enrichment. I've seen that it's been very helpful with the students I work with as well. So enforcing these things will close that reading gap.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
So as it relates to the question, I was part of the group that went to Chicago to learn about single gender classrooms, and by going to the COSBAC conference. When we went there, the intent was to learn and bring that information back so that we can establish a single gender school, starting with boys and then moving on to young ladies. That program, as you know, has had some issues over the years, but I think we've finally gotten to a point where the program itself has been turning around. Because we were being pressured to close the school, the board stuck to its guns, kept the school open, made some administrative changes, or the superintendent made some administrative changes, and got the school back on the track. So those things we're doing. We are pushing to make sure that the curriculum is followed with fidelity, is implemented with fidelity. We have one of the best curriculums around, according to the state. So now it's just implementation and making sure it's implemented with fidelity, and then measuring that, bringing back, whether that's through assessment or unit assessments. Those are the things that we've done. Those are the things that we'll continue to do.
Thank you. Ms. Lemon.
Academics, especially reading, was my push to go on this venture to be a part of the school board. As a tutor, I I come across students in the Paterson district that are in 6th, 7th grade, and they cannot read. I have to give them material that is on 1st, 2nd grade levels, and that bothers me to my core. As far as my tutoring business, I get to see students in other counties and now with virtual learning in other states. And it just hurts my heart that I'm able to push other students, but with my Paterson clients, I have to catch them up. As I meet with some teachers, I get feedback from them that, the student didn't have a math teacher the previous year, or they didn't have a language arts teacher. And I feel those vacancies are hurtful, more than hurtful to our children. You cannot go a whole year not having a core math teacher or a core language arts teacher. So I would say, firstly, making sure that we have the positions filled for those teachers to teach in the first place. The curriculum could be awesome, but if the teacher is not vacant to teach it, and the students are just dealing with substitute after substitute, how can they build that foundation to learn? As an early childhood teacher, I'm extremely big on starting our children at a younger level, to first get them to grow that passion for learning. So at a younger age, we have to start teaching phonics to our students. We have to monitor them. We have to make sure that there's reading specialists in every school, and really a team dedicated to not only seeing if our students can pass a test, but to see if they can actually read and apply those things to their lives. Me personally, during this pandemic, I've started the Brown Faces Book Club, and that's mostly to get our Black and Brown children, the diversity of our city here, to read books that, that they can relate to, that they can see characters and want to read it. So it's one, getting the material that is exciting and fun for them to learn, because learning has to be fun, especially for our students at a younger age.
Thank you. And Mr. Irving.
Yes. I think what really needs to happen is that we need to try to rally a lot of our communities and community service organizations together. I, as a firefighter, have been a part of years doing Read Across America with my Paterson Fire Department organization and with my Bronze Heat organization, who is it's our African-American based firefighter organization in the city. And we go around and we do a lot of community things for our young men and women. It's very important, for them to, have that reading, because what it does is it allows their minds to open up and expand to do more things. As Dr. Hodges pointed out, you can't do math and you can't do science, without being able to, read and understand things. We have to, come together with the families and these organizations, and we have to try to find a program that works. I mean, like I said, by the young men and women, when they see us coming for Read Across America as firefighters, they really got, excited, and they were very, very happy to see us. So if we know that's something that might help work, with our young men and our young women, these are things that we need to do. We need to, pull our resources together, and we all need to brainstorm together. Like some of my other candidates say, this cannot be done alone. We all have to work together. And, our board has done a great job with trying to, get these resources and get everything implemented together. And this is something that, I want to help them do and continue to move forward doing with them, getting these resources to our young men and our women.
Thank you. We have lots of great questions that we don't have enough time to get to in the chat. They're in reference to the Amistad Commission, the budget and raising taxes in order to meet the budget, the creation of a school foundation, which Paterson does have one. And finally, in Q&A, we have questions as to the overcrowding of classrooms. And I think that's the final, well, the last one's a comment. So I want to encourage the public to get a hold of the candidates and ask them these questions, because we are limited time today as far as the candidates' commitments. However, I do want to do a final round, so I'll ask the candidates in the order of my screen. I'll call your name in that order this time, to give just a 1-minute wrap up of what you would like the voters to hear that you have not had the opportunity to tell them this evening. And we'll start with Ms. Lemon.
So again, thank you guys for the Paterson Education Fund for this opportunity to talk to the public and also to hear the fellow candidates on where they stand. But I want you all to know that your voices and your teamwork is important to me. And I will do my best, my diligent work to research and bring forth the policies and resolutions and resources needed for our children to truly turn Paterson around and to truly change it and bring what's best for our children. We have to get out of the mind state of one person's doing this and just really understand the importance of teamwork and using our collective voices. We all have great ideas. We all have things that, this should be happening or that should be happening, but we have to come to the table with concrete solutions, with research, looking at other districts that have turned their systems around and got out of local control and got out of state control to local control and see what worked for them and how Paterson can also bring in those methods. Allow me to be that board member that brings cohesiveness and allow me to be the vote for our children. Remember to vote 2J for Shaniqua Lemon for school board. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you once again for the opportunity. Kenneth L. Simmons, 6J on the ballot. Once again, seeking support from Patersonians to continue the work that I have been doing. When I came to the board, as I stated earlier, we had a 46% graduation rate. Our graduation rate now is above 80%. We did not have any areas that we needed in terms of QSAC for local control. We've gained all of those areas. We are now in transition. I want to continue the service that I've been doing. I want to bring the board across the goal line or bring the district across the goal line. I want to be part of that team. My mantra this year as president has been we over me, choosing what's best for children. And I've been able to do that. We've been able to do that. And I want to continue that service. I want to continue moving this district forward. So again, as you get your ballots, please remember 6J, Kenneth L. Simmons, proven leadership and proven service.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
What I would like to tell the community is, as a parent, I understand the concerns that many have, so I want to be that person to represent all parents. As a person that works in the educational system, I want to be that person to advocate and represent teachers and staff and administration. And as a social worker, I want to be that person that advocates on social emotional wellness and provides resources for mental health issues. I feel I am the right candidate for the school board, bringing in a different perspective, which is the social work perspective and mental health. So when you get your ballots this week, please remember to vote for Dania Martinez, 4J. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for giving us all the opportunity to speak. As a firefighter for 15 years, I've served my community, and I've been more than happy to do that. I feel that this is another one of my callings that that my Creator has put in front of me, and this is why I want to run for the school board. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she's just getting ready to start school as well, and I'm a big proponent of making sure that my children are raised in the city of Paterson and they graduate from the city of Paterson, because I want to practice what I preach. If I'm advocating for, better, education and funding for our young men and women, I want my children to experience the same, same things as everyone else. So November 3rd, and even before then, when you get your ballot, I really want you all to, take a hard look and think about, why it is that you need the somebody like me, in this position to run for the board, because I not only fight fires, but I also fight for you. So vote for Herman Irving, 5J.
Thank you. And Dr. Hodges.
Your children deserve better than they're receiving educationally. My job on the school board has been to work to change the conditions that I first found this district, and to ultimately lead to excellence in education for Paterson students. It's a process. It isn't just a one effort. It takes time. we have a lot of work to do. I've pushed for
You're muted, Dr. Hodges.
with note-taking and study skills and cursive writing, those articles to help strengthen the students' skills. We've had an improved curriculum now that will present the opportunity for our students to move forward and do better educationally. This will take some time, and I'm hoping that we'll, over the next 3 years, I'll have the ability to do a lot more to improve the educational system. It's Dr. Jonathan Hodges, 2J, on your ballot.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates. We heard from all 6 candidates on the ballot today. So thank you for taking the time to be with us here this evening. And thank you for your willingness to serve in a job that is volunteer. So there is no pay. I want everyone to be aware of that. And is sometimes thankless. We appreciate your willingness to serve the children of Paterson. Thank you to our audience for joining us on behalf of Paterson Education Fund. It was great to have you watching. We will post this on Facebook at the Paterson Education Fund page. And do check out our candidates guide, which is available